The siege of Leith ended a 12-year encampment of French troops at Leith, the port near Edinburgh, Scotland. The French troops arrived by invitation in 1548 and left in 1560 after an English force arrived to attempt to assist in removing them from Scotland. The town was not taken by force and the French troops finally left peacefully under the terms of a treaty signed by Scotland, England and France. Background: the Auld alliance and reformation of religion. Scotland and France had long been allies under the Auld alliance, first established in the 13th century. However, during the 16th century, divisions appeared between a pro-French faction at court and Protestant reformers. The Protestants saw the French as a Catholic influence and, when conflict broke out between the two factions, called on English Protestants for assistance in expelling the French from Scotland. In 1542, King James V of Scotland died, leaving only a week-old daughter who was proclaimed Mary, Queen of Scots. James Hamilton, Earl of Arran, was appointed regent and agreed to the demand of King Henry VIII of England that the infant queen should marry his son Edward. This policy was soon reversed, however, through the influence of Mary's mother Mary of Guise and Cardinal Beaton, and Regent Arran rejected the English marriage offer. He then successfully negotiated a marriage between the young Mary and François, Dauphin of France. War of the Rough wooing. The English King Henry VIII, angered by the Scots reneging on the initial agreement, made war on Scotland in 1544 to 1549, a period which the writer Sir Walter Scott later christened the Rough Wooing. In May 1544 an English army landed at Granton and captured Leith to land heavy artillery for an assault on Edinburgh Castle, but withdrew after burning the town and the Palace of Holyrood over 3 days. 3 years later, following another English invasion and victory at Pinkie Cleugh in 1547, the English attempted to establish a «pale» within Scotland. Leith was of prime strategic importance because of its vital role as Edinburgh's port, handling its foreign trade and essential supplies. The English arrived in Leith on the 11th of September 1547 and camped on Leith Links. The military engineer Richard Lee scouted around the town on the 12th of September looking to see if it could be made defensible. On the 14th of September the English began digging a trench on the southeast side of Leith near the Firth of Forth. William Patten wrote that the work was done as much for exercise as for defence, since they stayed only 5 days. In response to the English invasion, the Scottish court looked to France for assistance, and on the 16th of June 1548 the first French troops arrived in Leith, soon to total 8,000 men under André de Montalembert DESSE. The infant Queen Mary was removed to France the following month and the English cause was effectively lost. Most of their troops had left by the end of 1549. In the following years the French interests became dominant with increasing numbers of French troops in Scotland, concentrated in Haddington, Broughty Castle and Leith. From 1548 onwards work began fortifying the port of Leith, initially with a bulwark at the Kirk Gate and at the chapel by the harbour, perhaps designed by the Italian Migliorino Baldini. The rest of the new fortifications were certainly designed by another Italian military engineer, Piero di Strozzi, and these represent the earliest use of the Trace Italian style of artillery fortification in Britain. Strozzi directed the 300 Scottish workmen from a chair carried by 4 men because he had been shot in the leg at Haddington. In 1554, Mary of Guise, the Catholic French widow of James V, was appointed regent in place of the Earl of Arran, who had been made Duke of Châtellerault by Henri II of France. Guise continued the pro-French policy, appointing Frenchmen to key positions. The Reformation crisis. Meanwhile, the Protestant Scots became increasingly restless, particularly after the marriage of Mary and François in 1558. A group of noblemen, styling themselves the Lords of the Congregation, had appointed themselves leaders of the anti-French Protestant party, aligning themselves with John Knox and other religious reformers. They raised 12,000 troops in an attempt to oust the French from Scotland. Arran changed sides at this point, joining the Lords of the Congregation. Meanwhile, Henry II of France was accidentally killed in a jousting tournament, and Mary's husband became King of France on 10 July 1559. During 1559, the Lords of the Congregation dominated most of central Scotland and entered Edinburgh, forcing Mary of Guise to retreat to Dunbar Castle. However, with the aid of 2,000 French troops, she regained control of the capital in July. A short-lived truce was made with the Articles of Leith on 25 July 1559. Guise received further military aid from France, thanks to the influence of Jacques de la Brosse and the Bishop of Amiens. The Lords considered this assistance a breach of the Leith Articles. Chatelherault wrote to summon other Scottish lords at the start of October 1559 to resolve their situation. It is not unknown how the Frenchmen H's begun men or 20 Daish to fortify the town of Leith, tending Derthro to expel the inhabitants is Tyroff and plant tame selfish, Ty Wiffish and Bernus tyrant till suppressing the liberty of this realm. Mary of Guise responded to these letters by making a proclamation on 2 October and writing to Lord Seaton, Provost of Edinburgh, that it was well known that Leith was fortified as a response to the congregation's intent to come in arms to Edinburgh on 8 October 1559, rather than to accommodate French troops and their families. She wrote, "We could do no less than provide ourselves with some sure retreat for ourselves and our company if we were pursued. The French," she said, "had not brought their families." Landowners affected by the new fortification works were compensated. One merchant, William Dawson, was granted exemption from any future customs duties for the loss of his building in North Leith. The Lords of the Congregation suspended Guise's regency and appealed to the Protestant Queen Elizabeth for English aid. In response to the situation, Elizabeth appointed the Duke of Norfolk to lead an expedition, and he travelled north to meet the Scots leaders at Berwick, and concluded the Treaty of Barrick. By this treaty, England now recognised the Lords of the Congregation as a power in Scotland, and safeguards were agreed for an English military intervention against the French in Scotland with provisions for their withdrawal.